Good morning, YouTube. Are you struggling to make contact? Are you trying to use practices like meditation and other things to create conscious contact with your creator? Today, we're going to talk about Dr. Wayne Dyer's 10 Secrets for Success in Inner Peace. And we're on principle number 4, which is embracing silence. Silence is the principle of learning to quiet yourself. And there's 3 different ways that I look at using silence in my life that helps me to, one, make conscious contact, but two, having more successful interactions with other people and being able to continue my own journey of growth and experience as I go through this life that we're here to live. A few things to clear up. Today is July 2nd, 2021, and it is a very special day in my family because today is my Uncle Mark's birthday. So, Uncle Mark, hello. I doubt you watch my videos, but hello, happy birthday. We love you. Have a beautiful day. Hope you're having a fantastic day. We are excited to be here. And so thank you so much for joining us. Any of you watching us here on the live or on the replay, make sure you give us a thumbs up. We are going to be talking today about embracing silence. I've been studying Dr. Wayne Dyer's work since about 1999. And I started really embracing it. I caught one of his PBS specials. And after watching that special, it was just like click, because so much of the stuff I was already studying spirituality. At that point in time, I was working as a ceremonial singer for a Native American healer. And so there was a lot of things I was learning. And a lot of what he was talking about were the same things I was already working on. And then in 2010, 2011, it was shortly before Emily was born. It was at the tail end of when I was living in Florida. And I was studying some of his work at that time. And then I found this book, The 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. And I read the book, and I went through the audio program applying the 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, which you can get at Hay House, or you can get them in Amazon. I actually have links to them down in the description below. But it had a huge, profound effect on my life. And I have gone through those programs over and over and over again. In fact, when he passed away in 2014, 2015, I think it was 14. When he passed away, Hay House put his content on sale, and I got the audio version of both of those programs. And I listen to them. I have them on my phone. I listen to them all the time, and I meditate on them. I contemplate them. And that's actually one of the things that we're going to talk about is meditation, contemplation, because that's part of this embracing silence, making conscious contact with God. And through some of the teachings in that book, or in the book and in the audio program, I've been able to make conscious contact. And it really kind of helped me to deal with a lot of things. It was because of studying this book and some of the principles in this book. This is how I was able to make some of the choices we had to make with Emily. This is how I've been able to learn new skills as quickly as I have. And a lot of the nurses are just like amazed sometimes because they're like, oh, you'd make a great nurse. And I'm like, I do this stuff because I have to, not because I desire to, not out of a need to. I don't want to be a nurse. I never really felt a calling to be a nurse. But I can do the job. I've learned how to do the job for the sake of my daughter, but the reason I've been able to learn some of those skills is because of this principle, embracing silence and being able to go into silence. So we're going to talk about how I do that. And then also in your interactions with other people, how much time do you embrace silence in your interactions with other people? Because sometimes the best way to really understand what's going on in a situation is to embrace silence in that conversation, in that moment. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with. It's something I've struggled with myself. So, it's not to hold anything against anybody if you don't do it. I'm all about, sharing my experience with life, but not telling other people how to live their life. I can tell you sometimes, if you want certain results, you have to take certain actions, but I'm not here to tell you that you have to take the actions I say. Um, Sometimes some people misrepresent what I say when I start saying you have to do this, you have to do that. I'm saying if you want certain results, you have to take certain actions to get them. I'm not telling anybody how to live their life. I don't believe in doing that. I think everybody has free will and everyone should respect other people's free will. At the same time, we stand firm in our own free will, setting our boundaries, saying that it's okay to be who I am and have my beliefs and have my philosophies separate from yours. And to say that you are absolutely entitled to have your own beliefs. You're not entitled to have your own choose the consequences. I believe we live in a reaping and sowing world where we take actions and we reap the benefits of our own actions, thoughts, ideas, the emotional energies that we put out into the world. So, how do we take control of that? One of the number one ways to take control of your life and to get out of this conflict and turmoil that we're constantly in is through silence. I have spent in the last 6 months more time in silence with myself as I've been doing my own healing, my own inner work, and doing that inside myself in silence than I have probably in my entire life all put together. And I've been practicing meditation, I've been practicing silence for about 30 years off and on. And I'll talk about some of the techniques I use to do that a little bit later on in the show. But this is one of the things that I've found is as I do this more and more in my own life, I have more peace with myself, not necessarily with other people, because other people want to control what I do and how I behave and what I do. But I have more peace with myself. And as I have more peace with myself, I have less conflict with other people, even if they have conflict with me. And it's kind of a paradox. That's one of the reasons why I like silence. Everything in the world, and even Wayne Dyer talks about this in the book 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace. Everything in the world has paradoxes. Everything has these paradoxes throughout our lives, except for silence. Silence is freedom from these paradoxes. Silence is where we can go to make sense of the paradoxes and to really embrace the paradoxes and accept them for what they are. We have contrasts. We have the two sides. Yesterday I did a video on the emotional scale and talking about love and fear. And that's really where the paradoxes are. The polarizations of energy, the polarizations of beliefs all come from understanding this emotional scale and understanding the levels of love and the levels of fear in what the situations that we're facing are. And to really feel that, to really get in touch with how that feels, you have to go into silence and go into inside yourself. And when you start finding silence and going inside yourself, we are able to make sense of some of those paradoxes. And sometimes it's just a matter of accepting the paradoxes without having to understand them. The more I go into silence and contemplation, the more I realize that it's okay for those paradoxes to exist. It's okay. And I don't have to understand. The more I embrace silence and conscious contact, the more I'm okay with my own paradoxes, with my own self. And I'm able to find peace with myself. You can't find peace in the world until you find it inside yourself, because I talked about this in my last show. The world is there is a law in spiritual principles called the law of consequence. Sorry, I'm getting my brain mixed up. We have this law in the spiritual laws that is the law of the name's taught on the tip of my tongue, but it's a mirror. The world we live in, the world that we see, is a reflection of our inner world. And this is why I spend so much time talking about embracing your inner world, is because your inner world is a reflection, or your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So if you see hatred, if you see condemnation, if you see victimhood, where you're everything's out to get you, everyone's out to get you, that's a reflection of what's going on inside of you. It's not really a reflection of how the world really is. If you see the world as a positive place, as a good place, and if you see every experience you have as something that happens for you, not to you, that's a reflection of what's going on inside of you. And you can find peace in that, and that empowers you. When you can start seeing your past as something that empowers you, not something that disempowers you, every experience in your life will change your direction. I was on TikTok just the other day, and somebody said, I was just scrolling through, and it showed up on my Fight for You page, where somebody was saying, all these people that say, all my experiences have brought me to where I want to be, and I don't like the person that I am. Well, that's a reflection of what's going on inside of you. It's not what's going on in the world. And you have to understand that that kind of a statement comes from somebody who's done the healing work inside of themselves to be at peace with themselves. And the fact that you're saying something like that you're not, it means you haven't found your own silence. You haven't gone inside yourself and done the healing work to heal from those past wounds. You still have all those past wounds open, and that's why you're in so much pain. One of the things I personally believe is that all pain happens to us. Pain is something that happens to all of us. Suffering is a choice that we make on what we do with that pain. And so that's one of the things, if I drive a nail into my hand when I'm a carpenter, if I was to drive a nail into my hand and I was just like, we're only going to think positive thoughts about this. No, because I got a nail in my hand. I got to look at the realistic expectations of what's going on. And then I have to, remove the nail so that wound can heal. If I leave that nail in there, it keeps that wound open, and that wound's going to get infected, and it's going to hurt more and more and more over time until I finally have to cut my hand off because it's so infected and gangrene that they can't save it. But if we remove the nail and then we focus on healing that wound, this allows us to heal and grow. The same thing is true. That's just a physical representation, but the same thing is true inside your emotional self and inside your mind, inside your thoughts. You have to allow those damaged thoughts to heal. You have to remove the thorns or the nails in your mind that are keeping those wounds open. And then we can work on the healing work to allow them to heal. How do we do this? One of my number one ways for doing this is going into silence in meditation. Now, there's a lot of meditation practices out there, and not of them are silence. There's a lot of different practices that all fall under this umbrella of meditation, but they're all actually different practices, but they kind of have a very similar outward expression, which is you sit and you contemplate and you quiet your mind. But the first thing to understanding meditation is learning to silence your thoughts, learning to find silence inside your own mind. And this is something that's hard for a lot of people. It's something that took me years of consistent practice to become proficient at it. Now I can do it within, about 5 to 10 minutes at a time. But when I first started, it was lucky if I could get into that silent space for 5 to 10 seconds. But one of the things that I do is we want to just sit, close your eyes, you breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just focus on your breathing. And allow your mind to think of nothing but focusing on your breathing for a couple of minutes, and get your mind to quiet down, because your mind is going to constantly go. And when you first start doing this, your mind's going to race. It's going to go, especially if you're ADHD like I am, your mind doesn't want to shut down. It doesn't want to be quiet. It doesn't want to be silenced. So just allow those thoughts to come up, acknowledge them, and allow them to go. Don't hold on to them. Don't sit there and hold on to a thought as it comes up. So that's number one. Go into silence inside yourself. This is where we make conscious contact. When you can really get to that place of silence in your mind and in your spirit, and then you can get your consciousness out of your head and into your heart chakra. This is where we make conscious contact with God. This is where we can make conscious contact. This is where we start seeing the oneness. This is where we start having those higher level energy experiences. This is where we're able to raise our energy vibration, but you have to get into silence. You cannot get there without silence. We're surrounded by noise constantly: TV, music, the radio, other people talking, especially in our common society where we're, got things going all the time. We are constantly surrounded by noise. And in order to break that silence, we have to be able to get into a quiet place within our own mind. So that's where we go. So I sit, and meditation doesn't require any specific poses. For me, sometimes it's just sitting in a chair like this and just putting my hands on my knees, feet flat on the floor, my back straight, close my eyes. I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. And I just focus on my breathing. And just do that for about 5 minutes. And if you just do that, that right there is like introduction, basic meditation 101. That right there is like your number one. And until you master that and you can do that and quiet your mind, you're really not ready to go further with meditation. And it took me about 3 years because I'm stubborn and I'm ADHD. So I had to do it whenever I could remember to do it. But overall, I mean, really, it didn't take me 3 years. If I was doing it consistently every day, it wouldn't have taken me 3 years, but I didn't do it consistently every day because my ADHD, I would forget until I got to the point where I started setting myself alarms to remind myself to meditate, setting aside a time to do it. And I started doing that like, I don't know, like 20 something years ago. Um, Started trying to do things to put things in there to remind me to do practices like meditation. And we didn't have smartphones back then. Now we got smartphones. I have apps on my smartphones to remind me to do things like meditation. And then as you do that, then you can start doing other things like guided meditations where somebody guides you through a process. I love guided meditations. I do them all the time. There's tons of them on YouTube, depending on what you want to do. If you want to manifest through meditations, there's guided meditations to help you manifest health, wealth, relationship issues, whatever kind of healing you want. There's guided meditations. There's also then music meditations, vibrations of music. But then there's also, and I do all of those kind of things. But the one that I like that goes along with this is embracing silence meditation. So in a silence meditation, I literally have no noise. I'll even put on my noise canceling headphones just so that I don't have ambient noise interrupting my silence and distracting me. And when I do this, then I can go inside. I can get completely still and quiet and stay there for as long as I possibly can. And usually for me, it's about 5 to 10 minutes. It's taken me 20 years of consistent practice, semi-consistent, because like I said, I'm ADHD, to get to a point where I can do it for 5 to 10 minutes. But if you start just practicing this and try to make it a habit of doing this, then you're going to find a place of peace and conscious contact. Because really what we're doing is we're connecting. And this is, if you study the law of attraction, which we've been doing some videos on, I've been teaching about, I've been learning from Abraham Hicks, Bob Proctor, uh, Joe Vitale, who doesn't live that far from me. Um, there's a lot of different people who teach the law of attraction in different ways, different aspects of it. So I've been studying these things for a long time. First book I ever read on it. I really recommend this book to everybody. It's The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. And it's specifically the first one, The Game of Life and How to Play It. That was one of the first books on manifestation, law of attraction. And it's written from a very biblical Christian standpoint. So Coming from, I read it in 1995 when I was going through my own religious deconstruction. So it was a good book to help me make that transition from the evangelical viewpoint of religious viewpoint into a more spiritual and mystical viewpoint, because it helps bridge that gap if you're in that middle of that transition. And it's been one of the most influential books in my life as well. I have a lot of books. I read a lot. I love to read. And now more I listen. I listen to audiobooks, and because I can listen to it over and over again. And I'm a very audio based learner. So I can learn better from audio and listening. And I can, listen to something over and over again while I'm doing other things. And it kind of helps. But we embrace silence through meditation. So that's one. And use that exercise I just shared to help you start finding your own silence. And whenever I do this meditation, I get to a point where I can really find the connection in my own self with my spirit. And this is why I put the attention on my heart chakra, because that's where we start finding our opening. Our heart chakra, as we go through the spiritual awakening, we start healing our heart chakra and the heart wounds that we had before we came into this lifetime, as well as the wounds we've picked up during this lifetime. And as we heal that, then we are able to make more conscious contact. And, Nelson Mandela was spent, what was it, 20 something years, I think, in prison. And most of that was in silence. And because he spent a lot of that time in silence, he did make conscious contact with God. And that's why when he came out of prison, he had no hatred. He had no judgment of the people who had harmed him or imprisoned him. Instead, he had only peace. And when you can find that level of peace through conscious contact with God, then you can pretty much work miracles in your life and in the lives of other people. But you have to find that conscious contact, and you have to find that peace within yourself. You have to go into silence. You'll never get there without silence. So number 2 way that I use silence is in my interactions with other people. And you see this, a lot of people, you may have seen me on live streams, and if you'll see me sometimes when there's a topic that I know something about, sometimes people can't get me to shut up. But whenever there's something I don't know about, or sometimes if there's too big of a crowd of people on the panel, I will sit there in silence. But I'm not just, kind of up in la la land most of the time. Sometimes I am. But most of the time I'm paying attention. I'm listening to what those other people are saying. I'm reading not only what they're saying, but their body language, and looking deeper. And I look at people and I can see kind of below the surface, because I'm a Scorpio, and that's what we do. We dig into things, and we see things sometimes that other people don't want us to see. Sometimes we see things that they're hiding from themselves. But you can go into silence in the middle of a conversation. Or if you're trying to solve a problem, go into silence instead of speaking every thought that comes into your mind. Because I think a lot of thoughts that never come out of my mouth. You don't have to say it just because you think it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is keep your mouth shut and hold a few seconds of silence and think before you speak. It's okay. A lot of people don't like that because they don't like silence in a conversation. They think silence in a conversation is a terrible thing. Sometimes a uncomfortable silence can be the best thing for a conversation. And sometimes you can have a thought that does not serve you or serve the other people, so you keep your mouth shut instead of letting it pour out your mouth. A lot of people, their mouth is running faster than their brain, and so things are pouring out of their mouth that they shouldn't. It also comes back to understanding what we're talking about with manifestations, law of attraction. If you're talking about, telling stories of the bad things that have happened to you while you're trying to manifest positive things in your life, but you're telling the stories of all the bad things that have happened. If you just pause and think about, okay, how is this going to affect my manifestation? Because you're putting this negative energy out into the world and expecting a positive energy to come back in return. And it just doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you put out into the world. The energy that you put out is what you attract to you, not what you think, not what you want. A lot of people teach the law of attraction is that you attract what you desire. And that's true as long as your desire is what you're putting out into the world. This is why we say be the change you want to see in the world. Don't try to change the world, try to change yourself. Because the more you change yourself, the more you be that change that you want to see in the world around you, the more you're going to be able to attract the right people, the cooperative components to you. But when you're having that conversation, sometimes it's best to just shut your mouth and think for just a second about, does this take me towards what I want? Does this take me away from what I want? I just did a video, not published yet, where I'm talking about finding our purpose in living our dream life. And one of the things I talk about in that video is every decision you make needs to be weighed against your life's purpose. And as you embrace that life's purpose, then you're going to know, do these words that I speak take me towards my purpose or away from it? And if they're words of anger or hatred or rage, then you might want to just pull back a little bit. And I'm not saying repress your feelings. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I'm saying that this may not be the way to let them out. And this is something I'm learning in my own life. And it's something that I am not a master of by any means. My wife can confirm that. But I am better at it now than I used to be. I'm better at it now than I was just 3 or 4 months ago. And a lot of that change has been because I've learned to embrace silence in conversations with her. Take a moment and actually think about what I say before it comes out of my mouth. Sometimes. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get out of that sometimes. I do. But I do better at it now than I did even 3 or 4 months ago. I'm definitely better at it now than I was a year ago, 2 years ago. When I was working at the prison, I was really bad because I was really out of alignment with myself. One of the things that came to why I left the prison is because I was already starting this journey that I'm on now, even 2 years ago when I left the prison. And I came to realize that just walking in the door every day compromised my integrity because I was not able to be myself. I had to put on a face that was not me in order to just walk in the door. And I had to be somebody that wasn't me. The people that worked in that prison really don't know me. They know the illusion that I created for them to see of me so that I could continue going to work every day and survive in that environment. Now, there were certain aspects of that were me. Absolutely. It wasn't a complete, taking on a totally different persona, but it was also, they did not see the full picture of me, and they did not see the compassionate side of me very well, because I had to bury a lot of that to work in that environment, to survive in that environment. But, one of the things that I do is, and I still practice some of these even then. We had a situation one time where we had an inmate that was having mental health issues, and he was in our administrative segregation unit, and we were trying to remove him from the facility. And every single person told me, and I was a shift lieutenant, so I was in charge of the entire facility and the security side of the facility on that day. And my major, my captain, even the warden were all convinced that we would not get this offender off of the facility without violence. I decided before we ever started that I was going to get this guy off the unit without violence, without use of force. Because maybe it was a bit selfish, but, I could spend a little bit of time getting him off this unit, or I could spend the next several days doing the paperwork on a use of force because we had to use force to get this guy off the unit. For me, I'd rather take a little bit more time to get him off the unit and get him off safely and without any harm to myself. It's also about my team, because this guy was a very violent offender, and he could have hurt me seriously, but he also could have hurt my team. And one of my number one goals every day I walked into that prison was to send my team home safely at the end of the day. So one of the things that we have to do is I went into, this is where it ties into what I'm talking about. I went into silence in myself. And I had to do this very quickly because I didn't have a whole lot of time to do this. But I went into silence and I segment intended based on like what we teach from Abraham Hicks. I did a segment intention of how I wanted this interaction with this offender to go. Now, I still had my team suited up, ready for a use of force, backing me up. So they were there. But I went down and I talked to this offender. And there were a few times where I started to lose my focus and intention, and he was becoming more and more aggressive. But I take a step back, I go back into silence, I breathed for a second, and then I went back into that place of this is my intention. And I held that intention in my mind that I wanted to get him peacefully off the unit. And we took it one step at a time. Why don't you just do this one thing for me? Why don't you do this one thing for me? Would you just, take your clothes off so we can do this search that we have to do? All right, well, go ahead and put your clothes back on real quick. All right, now just, let me put this handcuffs on you. We're going to take you over to the medical department so they can check you out, make sure you're okay. We escorted him over to medical, and he saw the medical team. They did their thing. They did what they had to do with him. And then it was just like, okay, well, why don't you just come over here? Let's go over here and do this. Let's go over here and do this. And this whole process, by the way, did not take, I'm telling you about a couple of minutes, but this whole process took like an hour and a half. But we got this guy out of the unit. As we're starting to get out of the door, he started to get a little bucky with us. I put myself right back into that intention. Why don't you just do this for us? Why don't you just do this for me? And afterwards, everybody else, I had my captain and my major over here telling me, well, you should have gotten him out faster. You should have just, sprayed him, got the use of force, and got him off the unit faster. You shouldn't have wasted so much time. And then here's the warden, who was also right there watching this whole thing, that said, thank you for avoiding a use of force. He was the only person, by the way, that thanked me for avoiding a use of force in that situation instead of causing one. Everyone else told me I should have used force and got it done faster. But I didn't want to spend the next several days doing the paperwork on a use of force. So I saved myself hours of paperwork. I saved my team hours of paperwork. And I made sure everyone was safe. And only one person, the warden, was the only person that acknowledged that I got this guy off without force when everybody else said there was no way I could do it. I had to embrace that silence, set that intention, and do that in order for that situation to go the way it did. So embrace silence in your life. Embrace silence when you're dealing with people. Set intentions for how you want things to go and follow that. And every second through, step back, take a second and say, does this bring me towards that intention I said at the beginning of this conversation? And if it does, then say what you need to say. But if it doesn't, if it takes you out of that place of peace, out of that place, because when you set an intention with your spirit, with your higher self, and you set an intention that's in alignment with your higher self, and then you think your way through the conversation and through the situation, then you can have a positive outcome from that situation. And this is how you create miracles in your interactions with other people. This is how you start creating and manifesting things that everybody else swears you cannot do. I did this multiple times throughout my life. That story was just one example of me doing this. I did it a lot of times working in the prison. There was a lot of times where tasks were given to me that everyone said was impossible, and I was able to make it happen through silence, through setting my intention, and through creating that intentional outcome of what I was going to do, and not listening to the noise, shutting out the noise that was telling me it was impossible, shutting out the naysayers. When I started YouTube, people told me there's no way you can do this on YouTube. Now, 10 years ago, when I started on YouTube, I listened to those naysayers. This was before I started embracing some of this stuff in my own life. I listened to those naysayers that told me I couldn't do this, that I couldn't teach the things that I'm teaching right now are the same things I was trying to teach 10 years ago. I understand them deeper. I understand them better. And I agree with some of what was said because there was a lot of the things that I understand better now than I did back then. I wasn't ready to. But I let a lot of people that were naysayers, a lot of people that were to control my decisions instead of going inside myself, finding that peace within myself and following my own guidance and intuition. And it's really, I try not to live with regrets, but if I was to have anything that I would regret in my life, that would be it, was deleting all the content that I had 10 years ago on YouTube. Because I had some things out then that I still haven't been able to recreate now that I think were very powerful messages. Maybe they'll come back someday. I don't know. But going into silence. So the first two, meditation and silence in those conversations, are going to help you to create a better intention with the life that you're living. I hope that you're getting some value with this. If you are, if you think that this is valuable and helpful to yourself and other people, make sure you follow us all around the web. We are on Facebook, YouTube, my personal Twitter, our Instagram, and we just started up on TikTok. I've only got a couple of videos and a few followers there, but you can join us on TikTok as well. I'm spending a lot of time over there the last few days. We've been doing some live streams over there, or not doing some, but watching some. But it's been fun. We're having a good time. So also give us a like and a thumbs up on this video. So the third way that we embrace silence, we've been talking about meditation. We've been talking about taking some silence in your conversation. But then the other way that we embrace silence is embracing silence in the way that we approach, how do I say this? I knew what I wanted to say, and it's racing out of my mind right now. But I spend time every day in silence. I like to drive in silence because I'm allowing my thoughts to catch up, allow my thoughts to clear out. I listen. Sometimes we go into silence to quiet our mind through listening to music. Oh, I remember what it was. In the book, in the program, Applying the 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, one of the techniques that Wayne Dyer teaches and that I've been using myself, I use this with the Serenity Prayer. I use this with these principles that we're talking about in my meditations, is a process called getting in the gap. And it's kind of a meditation practice, but it's a little bit different. And he teaches this practice more deeply in his program called Meditations for Masters, Applying the Wisdom of the Ages. And in that Meditations for Masters, but he also teaches it in Applying the 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace program. Basically, it's where you take a rote prayer or your affirmations or these principles that you're wanting to work with, and you speak them in your mind, but then you focus on the gap between the words. One of the things that we talk about when we're talking about silence is music is a beautiful thing, but music, just a single note without silence, is just noise. It's the silence between the notes that makes the music. And the same is true with these principles. It's a silence between the words that brings you into deeper understanding of the principles. So one of the things I do is let's use the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. And we go through that line, just that one line, and we go, God grant. And then we kind of fall back into that space between God and grant. And just hold your attention in that space for a moment. And then grant me. And then fall back into that space between grant and me. And just hold your attention in that space. And then me, thee. Fall back into the gap between thee and me. And just allow your attention to focus on that gap. And if you do that through the whole prayer, through each line of the prayer, and in the book, in applying the 10 secrets for success in inner peace, Dr. Dyer did this with the Lord's Prayer. And you can do it with any Lord's Prayer. I've done it with the Serenity Prayer. I've done it with the Lord's Prayer. I've done it with the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. I've done it with these principles that I teach. I do it with my own principles that I'm working on. My affirmations that I create for myself in my meditations. When I'm doing affirmation meditations, I use this getting in the gap meditation practice. And by getting in that gap, you can understand the words deeper. It takes you deeper into the meaning of them. It takes you deeper into your own understanding and finding true alignment with yourself and with others. So if you have a quote or a phrase that is something that you want to learn from or want to grow from, use this getting in the gap meditation with that word or phrase. And it can really help you to understand it, to dive deeper into it, to fully embrace it and embody it and make it a part of who you are. So we've been going for a while. Hello, Prosperous Caregivers. That's my wife, Jessica. And so as we go into getting into this gap, we can create the life that we want. How are you using silence in your life? And what questions do you have about how to find that silence in your life? If you have these kind of questions, if you have any questions, make sure you leave us a comment down below. And in our upcoming videos, we've got several videos coming up that we've already recorded. Some of them, we got one coming out on the law of attraction, manifestation, and how to power up your manifestations quicker. And then we also have another one that's coming out on finding your life's purpose and how to find meaning and purpose in your life and getting in that direction. We've got a lot of videos coming out in the next few days, few weeks. So hope that this has been enjoyable for you. It has been fun for me. But we're going to go ahead and cut it off and go take care of some things with the family. So y'all have a fantastic day. Thanks for joining us.